Hi everyone, welcome to Soundcheck. This talk is how important is PR, and I'm here with Chris and Jamie from Wall of Sound PR, who I would say are experts in PR. Hopefully that's not too flattering. How's it going, guys? You okay?
Oh, very well, thank you, mate. That's very
Yeah,
kind of
good,
you.
thank you.
So these guys work for a PR company, Wall of Sound. Um, and Wall of Sound, I remember when I first started researching the world of PR, Wall of Sound, and I'm not just saying this because I'm with you guys now, was the first PR company I ever came across. So you guys, you're pretty well known in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's weird because I don't really think about it that much in terms of kind of like where the I mean, obviously, we're always trying to kind of like do better and sort of grow the profile of the business and stuff. But yeah, I suppose we're probably one of the more well-known companies that are kind of working on the sort of music we do. So a lot of independent labels and artists. We work with some of the bigger independent labels now, and we're starting to have some sort of bigger clients on the roster. So yeah, it's definitely, everything's moving in the right direction, and the company's growing slowly, and the artists are growing at a really good rate as well. So yeah, it's going well.
Cool. So for the people watching at home, what do you guys do? What are you guys as individuals, your roles within the company?
So I'm the company director. So I started the business. I actually started it self-employed about, I think it was in 2012. But I was doing PR on my own, just kind of like I say, self-employed freelance for quite a while. And then I met Lee and Chris, who obviously Chris is on the call now. Lee's our in-house radio plugger as well, who's also on the team. And I met those guys, and we just kind of got on really well, and we were all into the same kind of music. And I liked their kind of ethos and attitude and stuff, and it fitted. One of the things for me when I started working and thinking about, maybe I could turn this into a business, was I really wanted to work with people who were like-minded and like had the same sort of values and ethics and beliefs that I did. And the music industry can be like a really sort of shady, dodgy place sometimes, and like I've had experience of that, where I used to be a musician, and we had some kind of negative experiences, with the band that I was in, and kind of, you see people get ripped off a lot and given bad advice, and I was just really kind of concerned that I wanted to try and be one of the good guys and do good, sort of good community work, I suppose, like building an actual independent music community and helping people navigate it who maybe didn't have the kind of support from major labels or understand the infrastructure. So that was how I got into it anyway. I'm the company director. I also do a lot of the online and print PR stuff. I mostly head that up. And then Chris, do you want to speak to the guys as well?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris, and I'm the head of digital marketing, and I also support Jamie with online and print services for our roster. Kind of similar sort of story. Like I'd done a lot of freelance music journalism and played in bands, and from that kind of fell into doing some music PR, mostly for friends' bands and things like that. And it's something that I always sort of always relished and enjoyed, was getting to support, friends in music and bands that I was really into. So I ended up doing a bit of freelance work for a while, and then sort of crossed paths with Lee and Jamie, and it just seemed like a natural home for the kind of thing that I wanted to do. I think for us, we'd fallen into a special sort of position where we do get to support a lot of emerging artists, and often sort of play not a father figure or anything like that, but we do get turned to answer a lot of questions about all different aspects of the business. And I think it's a really rewarding role to have, to be able to support people as part of that journey.
Cool, absolutely. Well, look, you guys spoke there about emerging artists, and I think those guys watching this today, they're all going to be emerging artists to some degree, whether that's brand new or whether they're, getting ready to tour, or, it's going to be a whole range of people at different levels watching this. So what is the difference between someone who's an emerging artist who's ready for a PR campaign, who's ready to, you know, put some money into it, and who needs that kind of media attention, and someone who is probably okay at their local grassroots kind of level? What is the difference between those two artists?
For me, it's kind of, on one hand, it's very obvious to me, and on the other hand, sometimes it requires a bit of sort of examination and questioning. You know, we get a lot of inquiries, you know, to be honest, a lot of our business is either recommendation or just sort of cold inquiries from people. You know, we genuinely try to be one of those companies where if we get an email from someone saying, hey, I've got an EP coming out or an album or whatever, I genuinely do listen to it. You know, it might be that like I immediately decide I either don't like it or it's not right for us, or the artist isn't ready, but we do try to listen to everything. And if we do decide that it's not for us, but I do think it's ready for PR, or, you know, it would be beneficial to someone, I do actually try and refer them to other companies that we trust as well that might be a good fit, because, you know, I'd rather do that than they end up going, you know, with someone that isn't particularly the best fit. But in terms of when they're ready, I mean, for me, when an artist is ready is at the point where they've really spent a lot of time on the actual craft of songwriting. You know, they've got to a point where the songs are genuinely really good. They are well written, well produced. They've been able to spend time getting the actual craft of both songwriting and playing live right. They've thought about the context of the music they're writing and the surrounding assets that support that. You know, so they might have a great record, but they also come with a kind of almost like a feel for, like, you know, this is what we want the album artwork to be like. It's how it connects to the music. We want the press shots to be like this because, you know, we're trying to express this particular aspect of either who we are as people or, you know, what the music's like. So it tends to be a kind of, you just get a feel for kind of like, you know, this artist feels ready. You know, they've got everything together. There can be a difference between, you know, sometimes I get an email from someone like that and they have everything ready and like all their kind of assets and the music and everything is in a great place, but they obviously have like absolutely no experience at all of the actual industry and how to release things. For me, I would say like, that doesn't mean that you're not ready for a PR campaign, but I think you need to try, as Chris was saying before, you know, we kind of end up actually, which I'm not sure if all PR companies do, but we find ourselves ending up in quite like a sort of broad hand-holding role with a lot of independent artists. You know, they'll come to us for PR, but we actually end up doing a lot of kind of like things that maybe would fall under like label services or management. So, you know, we'll advise on kind of release schedules, you know, we'll help with kind of like tweaking maybe assets that aren't quite right. We might be able to introduce them to promoters or agents or label. You know, sometimes people come and I think, oh, this record would be a perfect fit for, I don't know, Alcopop, say, who are a label that we work with, or Ven Records, you know. So it might be that I actually hook them up with the record label. And then sometimes an artist will come and they'll have a very clear idea. You know, they'll say, I've got this release schedule, I want to do this, I've already got an agent on side. So in terms of kind of the being ready for PR, for me, as long as you've got a kind of very clear image of your music and what you want to do with it, I think that's the key for me. I don't know, Chris, have you got anything that you think to add that I haven't covered there?
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. I don't think there's particularly certain boxes that you need to check or anything like that before you reach out to a PR company. You know, we've worked with artists who are coming straight out the gate with their first release, right through to bands that are on, you know, their third or fourth record, who might not have even at that stage done much in the way of press. I think it's something that you should reach out to people and have conversations about to decide if it's right for you.
Yeah, so Jamie, you focus lots on the digital marketing side, right?
Sorry, Chris. Yeah, Chris does the digital marketing.
Sorry, Chris. Yeah. So obviously, if you're a young artist, you know, you can't control what a publication might think of you, but social media, you know, TikTok, Instagram, you can control that. You can control your content. You are entirely in control of that. So it's an interesting distinction, isn't it, between PR in the traditional sense, excuse me, you know, a write-up in NME, to what it's become now, where it's almost entirely in your hands. You've got your fan base right where you want them, and you can give them whatever you want. How does an artist capitalize on that without, you know, maybe coming across amateur? How do you take advantage of that in a marketing perspective?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think you're right. I think it's kind of it's given all the tools to people now to be able to shape, you know, how they appear to people. You know, the old sort of gatekeepers at press aren't as important for crafting that image anymore. But I'd say that they do work hand in hand. You know, PR supports digital marketing and vice versa. I think it's really important as an artist to have, as Jamie mentioned earlier, like an overarching idea of what you stand for, and what you know, who your ideal fan is. You know, to really think about like what that person, you know, what other music that person listens to, what, you know, where they might shop, what books they read, what magazines they read, all these things to develop an idea, and then really like craft your content to make sure that you know, you're always pleasing that one individual person. You can't please everybody, but if you have a very narrow idea of what you're about, then it becomes quite easy to sort of steer things in that direction. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's going to be lots of people, you know, who just aren't sure. You know, they might know what PR is, and many of them will, you know, have heard some horror stories and maybe some successes. And I think, you know, I've heard of some careers that weren't, you know, taking off, and then they've launched a great PR campaign, and, you know, like that, you know, one good write-up and everyone's listening. So I think there's two sides to PR that I think that I've met in my time. I think there's people who are very pro PR, and some people who will turn around and say, you know, why would you bother? You know, you don't have a label, you don't have this. Why would you throw X amount at PR? So what do you say to those types of people who, you know, might sit down with a young artist and tell them not to bother with PR?
I think, to be honest, I think that's totally the artist's choice, really. You know, I mean, I can fully empathize and understand, you know, especially these days. I mean, you know, me and Chris, I don't play in a band anymore, but Chris and Lee are both still in bands. They're both signed to independent labels and have been releasing music themselves for years. So we are very aware of the costs for independent musicians, you know, and I like to think that we try and keep things affordable without kind of underselling ourselves. You know, we do understand the budgets that people are working with. We know that, you know, say like an average PR campaign might come in at maybe like £1,500, something like that on average, you know, for a sort of independent release, maybe, you know, sort of across a wide variety of companies, maybe. You know, that's a lot of money for an independent artist. You know, I mean, a lot of people are doing this as a second career. You know, they're having to work a day job to support themselves, to kind of support their art. And, you know, the costs alone of kind of, you know, rehearsing and producing a record, and you know, hiring a designer to do your artwork if you need to, press photos, you know, we're well aware of the costs. So yeah. I fully empathize with people who kind of question the need for, or the nature of PR, because I think one of the tough things about it is that it can actually be quite difficult to show either direct correlation or kind of the value necessarily always. You know, I mean, obviously everyone can see the value of, you know, getting a great piece in like The Guardian, for example. You know, one of our artists had a really nice feature in The Guardian last week. It's actually quite difficult to, I mean, it's getting easier with, you know, the amounts of data you can track on Spotify and things like that, because you can see the results in real time. You know, if we get a radio play for one of our artists, the next day you can see, oh, there's a bit of a spike on Spotify because, you know, people have gone to check it out, and, you know, but it can be difficult to understand sometimes, you know, for people, I think, where that money is going. But I think a lot of the time I see PR as a kind of long-term investment personally. And I think anyone who is approaching it as a magic bullet for their record or their career or anything like that has probably got the wrong end of the stick about what it is that we do, you know. And I also think PR a lot of the time can very much be about timing, which obviously links back to your question earlier about, you know, when an artist is ready, when is the right time to engage PR. You know, I mean, for example, we have clients at the moment who they're working with quite a small budget, and it might be their first release, might be the first couple of singles, or they might be singles that aren't particularly airplay friendly. So we'll only be doing a kind of online and print service, maybe with a bit of digital support on that. And we've decided, okay, we're not going to look at radio for this because it's just too early, or it doesn't feel like the right time. And the option is always there to bring that in, you know, when the time does feel right. You know, if, okay, so all of a sudden they land a support tour and things are picking up a little bit and there's more interest, then we might go, okay, now it's worth spending some money on some radio promotion, maybe on a single, to kind of lift things up a little bit. But for me, the real sort of value in PR is for those artists who maybe aren't sure exactly where their fan base is. They're not sure quite how to kind of tell the story of who they are as artists themselves. And they're not sure how to engage with and reach those people. And obviously the press and media in general is a great way to reach people. You know, if you're not great on social media, or you are great on social media, but you find you're not getting necessarily the traction in the right places, or maybe you'd like to increase your visibility within the music industry as well. You know, a lot of the time we'll find, I did a premiere once for a band on the Q magazine website. I don't think they actually do premieres over there anymore, but we did one. And the next day they emailed me, the band emailed me. They were pretty much a new band, you know, they didn't really have a team. They emailed me and said, you know, we got that Q piece yesterday, and they opened their email in the morning and they'd had like 3 offers from record labels, 2 agents get in touch, a bunch of lawyers, you know, loads of people who were interested in working with them. Obviously that doesn't always happen. It's quite rare actually that does happen, but you know, there's certainly no bad thing about raising your visibility both within the industry and at the media in general, you know, and being able to shape and control that narrative yourself, like you said, through social media. I think that one of the roles of a good PR person is helping you to do that through the media as well. You know, obviously we can't control what the press write, and we wouldn't try to, but you know, we like to help people to tell stories, and one of our roles is to kind of speak to journalists and say, look, you know, we've got this artist, they've got this new record, it's got a fantastic story, or there's a really interesting angle on this, you know, and we work hard to establish and maintain relationships with those journalists who we think will understand the sort of artists we work with, you know. So hopefully when it's time, we can pair them up and it's a good fit and everyone gets a great piece out of it at the end. So
yeah, well, you know, I think it's difficult for artists because, you know, PR and music are so synonymous. You know, you grow up hearing PR stunt, you know, left, right, and center. Oh, you know, that was a good piece of PR. You know, people, as well as people know about PR and understand it to a degree, is also this kind of this mystery. And I think a good example of that is, you know, how artists feel at the moment about Spotify playlisting. And I wanted to talk to you guys about this because I think you guys will have a good insight on it. It does seem to be this mythical being that nobody seems to be able to crack. And obviously there are some PR companies that are offering playlist pitching, and I've heard mixed reviews about that. And I think this whole, as I say, this whole mystery of Spotify playlisting is just driving independent artists nuts. And I don't know what your guys' take on that is, if there is any answers to playlisting and how, from a digital marketing perspective and from a PR perspective in general, because obviously these playlist curators do take in the whole artist story into account when they're curating these playlists. What do you guys think about that as a topic?
Chris, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, I think it can be a bit of a murky world, the whole Spotify playlisting thing. I think there are a lot of charlatans out there and people that will be happy to take your money and stuff it into a playlist with, you know, 500 bots listening to it and that's it. But there is a place for it, and there are plenty of real organic playlists out there that are made by real music fans and that do have good amounts of listeners. It's making sure that you are reaching out to credible playlists, and that you're really putting the time in to work out, where your music would actually work best. I think in terms of getting onto Spotify's editorial playlists, that again is something there's a lot of mystery about it, and differing opinions on how best to approach it. I'd say personally the best thing that you can do is to try and invest in building your own Spotify audience the best that you can, building up your monthly listeners, signposting people to your Spotify, making sure it's all up to date and that you've got an up-to-date biography on there, that you've got cool press shots that kind of align with your vision of what the band is, or you as a musician. I think taking advantage of some of their new features like Canvas, and making your own playlists on your profile as well is important. And then of course there's like one of the things that we do is through digital marketing is trying to build up some of those streaming numbers, and that again can help in terms of your position within Spotify's algorithm. If you can sort of, Spotify are massive on data, so if you can show that you're bringing people from the right areas to listen to your music, people from similar artists or the right types of genres, and then I think you put yourself in a stronger position to land some of those editorial spots. At the minute, the best method of getting onto an editorial playlist is to, they say anyway, is to use their playlist tool on Spotify for Artists. And you have a good opportunity there to talk about your music and to tell them anything relevant that you think that they'd be interested in. I wouldn't say that you should avoid trying to get onto normal Spotify playlists, but I'd say just be careful with how you approach it and make sure that you're really thinking about where your music will actually work, and not just taking a scattergun approach and trying to get as many playlists as you can, because it's just not really going to serve you in the long run.
I think, just to quickly mention as well, I think that approach definitely applies to PR as well. We try, obviously it's hard when you're servicing to a lot of people, but we do try to keep things targeted. I'm sure there are probably a few journalists on our mailing list who will disagree with that. But like Chris says, you try to keep as many people happy as you can. We have people who only like to review things from CD or vinyl, and certain people who only want certain genres, or they're only interested in kind of getting new tour dates rather than records for review. So we try wherever possible to segment up our mailing list into those targeted areas. And I think that, like Chris says, taking that targeted approach is always going to yield better results. It might feel like, oh, okay, I'm only contacting like 100 people instead of 1,000 people, but there's no point contacting 900 extra people who just do not care about what you're doing. It's just a waste of everyone's time. So I think that kind of taking that thoughtful, targeted approach, it applies across the board, to be honest. That's something that it's a mistake a lot of new artists make, I think.
Absolutely. And from your perspective, targeting is getting the right blogs for the genre, etc. To kind of touch on my point earlier about the PR stunt, how important do you guys think, when you are targeting these blogs, how important is some sort of wow factor? Because I've worked with PRs, but in my band, my biggest frustration with PR was I'd always have people saying to me, what's the story behind this song? And I just think, well, there isn't like some, amazing story behind the song. It's a song I wrote about this. And I remember the frustration for me was I'd see other artists, similar artists getting, big placements. So let's say, like a Guardian article or, Clash, Upset, those types of magazines. And they didn't have some huge grandiose story. And I kind of felt, well, why do I need to now come up with a story in post about this song? Do you think it's something that artists should be considering even when writing? You know, how can I get this to
No,
stand out to people?
I think when you're writing a song or creating art or any of that kind of thing, for me personally, I mean, this is just how I feel about it. The end kind of process of like marketing your music and all that kind of thing, I feel like that should be so far away from the creative process personally. I mean, unless you're kind of writing a song where
I agree. That was my frustration at the time. I was so frustrated because I just, you know, these are just my songs. Why do I now have to do
yeah,
this?
I completely get, I totally understand that, and I appreciate why artists get frustrated as well. I mean, to be honest, it's a frustrating job for PRs as well. I mean, you know, sometimes unfortunately, we're in the kind of like double-edged sword position of being able to see behind the curtain on a lot of things, and like, you know, we're also there to kind of shield artists as well, you know, from some of the kind of like either negative feedback or, you know, difficult relationships that they have to kind of navigate with people. You know, it's not always like a easy thing to understand how to communicate with people in that setting, you know, and to kind of navigate the various factors that go into securing a piece of coverage. You know, I mean, it can range from one end of the spectrum of like being as easy as like, I have a long-term relationship with a journalist. I can send them a 1-sentence email with a link to a song and go, hey man, you're really going to love this song, like I know you are. And then the next day it gets featured somewhere. That's on like the very minimal end of the scale, all the way up to like, you know, working up a really, really in-depth feature idea, collaborating with loads of different people, navigating like release schedules, the fact that someone's on paternity leave the week the single's out, you know, all these various things. You know, someone's had a bad day, so they're just in a bad mood and they don't want to listen to your music. You know, it's like all these things can go into a release and making a successful kind of job of the PR behind it. So it's kind of it's that position of kind of being for me a good PR person. Whilst there may, you know, I'm sure there is a story behind songs that people write, and it's not necessarily the artist's job to tell us what that story is. You know, it's our job to listen to the music, learn about the artist, get to know them as a person, understand what they're writing about, why they're writing, what the song is about. And then we can look at all of those factors and go, oh, have you actually considered that there's a really interesting, you know, angle on this? For example, I mean, like at the moment, you know, we're working with a great artist called Nomad Spock, who his parents are from Somalia, but he actually lives in, he was born in Hull, I think, and raised in Hull. And then he lived in Cardiff for a while. And then he moved to like, I think he went to like Saudi Arabia, Thailand, you know, all these kind of places. And then he came back to the UK and recorded this just like phenomenal album in Scotland on this tiny island. And obviously that's an example for me of like, I mean, his whole life is the story. Do you know what I mean? Like he's such an interesting guy, and like he's done so much stuff. Like, so for someone like that, it comes easy, you know, that's like a ready-made, okay, that's great, you know, like there's so many different things we can do with that, you know. But sometimes, you know, you get someone who's like, it kind of, it's sort of, I don't want to say sad, but like, yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of, I think people need to believe in themselves more sometimes. And again, you know, that's something that we can help with. You know, some people just need to like someone else to like validate what they're doing and say like, hey, it's good, man, you know, like you should. And, you know, some people will come and say, hey, look, you know, I just write these songs in my bedroom. Like, I don't really, you know, I'm not like you know, I haven't done anything exciting. Like my songs are just, you know, like not about anything particularly groundbreaking, whatever. Like for me, like some of those actually end up being the ones with the most kind of like personal, interesting stories, providing that you really dig into like who that person is and who they are as an artist, and understand their music, you know, and if you can get that right and understand them and understand what they're trying to communicate with their music, because you know that's what art is, you know, art and music, we're all just trying to communicate our experience of life with other people, you know, and sort of either kind of connect with them in some way or just feel understood, you know, from feel other people have understood our experiences, you know. So for me, that's the approach that I take with our artists, and I really try to understand what they're doing and who they are, you know. And for me, that is, you can find stories everywhere, you know, everyone has a story, there's always a story. Like you just said, you know, you don't know what the stories are behind your songs. I guarantee that they're awesome. I guarantee we could find them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all part of the role then, you know, of what you guys do, you know, pulling that out of artists. I think that's really cool. I think that's definitely going to be really interesting for everybody listening. I think you know, so let's say you've done that stage one, let's say, you know, you've done that, you've pulled something from an artist, and you know you've got your press release ready to go. What do you think artists can do once Wall of Sound, you know, and perhaps this is a collaborative effort between the guys at Wall of Sound and the artist, how do you turn a good feature, let's say, you know, in a magazine like Clash, for argument's sake, how do you turn that from words on a screen to followers on your social media or interest in your act? Because, you know, I think there's a fine line between a good piece of PR like that. Simply, I think I see a lot of artists using it just as, you know, for want of a better word, clout, to say, oh, you know, I've been in Clash, look at me go, instead of Clash's readers then going on and engaging in the band and becoming a fan. So how do you take that relationship and make it into a fan?
I mean, I think it's really important to make, you know, I know you say about using it as clout. I'd say a lot of bands actually do the opposite and don't really push it enough. You know, even just following the basics of actually posting the article onto your social media seems to be a bit difficult for some artists to do. But you know, really covering the basics and making sure that your fans are aware of what you're doing and that people are talking about your music is really important. And I think engaging, you know, like having a mailing list and having, you know, a physical sign up sheet at your merch stand at gigs for people to sign up and, you know, keep in touch is really important to give you that you know, give you that through line to talk to people. But yeah, I mean, definitely using articles and features like that as a developing artist is really important. You know, when you're reaching out to people to try and book shows and to foster relationships with people, being able to signpost to, you know, key bits of coverage is really important. I think it can be used as a tool to bring on new fans as well. You know, being clever with bits of coverage like that and running adverts to, you know, people that either follow that publication or, you know, similar artists it could be a good way of approaching it. But I think, yeah, definitely, like, don't undersell yourself if you do land something like that, because it can be a really like good turning point for a lot of artists.
I would say as well, Chris, just to add to that, like, I think a lot of the time, one thing that infuriates me, I don't know why, even independent labels do this. Like, we get all this press, and like, you know, you're on the tube or wherever. Coldplay have a new album out. They've got their album poster. It's got all the quotes from the press. It's got all the star reviews, all that kind of. People just don't bother to do that, you know. I'm like, they're like, the album's out today. I'm like, hey, we got all this press for the album. Are you not going to like make an image that has all the press quotes on it? So, you know, that is definitely something that, you know, we try to encourage people to do. You know, talk about the press you're getting, you know, use it. Like, that in itself is a great thing. You know, I think a lot of people are scared of self-promotion or feel like it makes them you know, look arrogant or whatever. You know, I don't think like that. You know, it's fine to promote what you're doing. It's totally acceptable, and if people don't like it, I'm frankly, they can get lost, you know. I mean, it's, you know, yeah. I think you know, everyone has a responsibility to, if they want to make a career out of what they're doing, you know, you have a responsibility to do that. You know, I mean, it's like this call, you know, I mean, obviously, I believe in kind of helping people understand what's happening in the music industry, and helping to educate, you know, young people. You know, I would be absolutely lying and being dishonest with you if there isn't part of this which is like obviously like promotion for my business. You know, it's the way it is, and like I think it's wrong to feel bad about that or make anyone else feel bad about it, especially in this day and age. You know, I think everyone is just trying to do what they want to do and what they love, and you should be allowed to kind of shout about that and be proud of yourself, you know.
Yeah, in terms of you know, we spoke there about if you get a, you know, something, if you get something to tell your fans about, you should tell them. With that in mind, if you're a publication, you know, a small blog, a big blog, how interested are they in the traffic that an artist brings to their website? Are they looking at, you know, let's say Wall of Sound to do a feature with a certain artist, and they then go on to do another release? Are they going to look at the first release and be like, oh, well, you know, we only got 150 clicks on this, we're not interested in this anymore? Or is it less about that for them?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes and no, basically. You know, some places are very concerned about traffic, obviously. I think there's a bit of a kind of seesaw tipping point on that. You know, I think you will find that like a lot of small blogs will be very happy to premiere songs by both small artists and big artists, and that's for two reasons. You know, one is because they're like genuine music fans who love music and just want to share it and shout about it. And two, like, yes, the traffic is good for small blogs. You know, they're, you know, say even if you're only a small band with kind of 500 followers on Twitter or whatever, you know, it's probably where the majority of that blog's traffic are coming from, while they are building up their readership. You know, they're doing that by taking from lots of little audiences all over the place, you know, and hopefully kind of like your traffic from a video premiere will feed into that. Conversely, you know, big sites, when we work with big sites, they're not necessarily bothered about and it goes, to be honest, it works the same for print press as well. You know, they're not necessarily like putting you in the mag or on the site because like you've got loads of fans. You know, they don't think like, you know, this small band from like Gloucestershire's gonna suddenly sell them 5,000 extra magazines. You know, it's more like they're happy to kind of support that new talent and bring it through. But on the other end of the scale, obviously those sites are extremely interested in premieres from big artists with huge audiences, because there's a strange thing happening with the media at the moment where it has definitely become much more of like a symbiotic relationship, I think, than it used to be. I think it used to be that really like the magazines and the papers, and you know, they had much more power, and they had a much more kind of like engaged direct audience, and they were kind of like servicing that audience, you know, with whatever they deemed kind of you know, was worthy of appearing in the publication. I do definitely feel like there's a reversal in some circumstances now, whereby some publications and certain places are very aware of like tapping into the artist's audience and using that for their own revenue generation, you know. So yes, it's interesting. You know, it's a very interesting time to be working in press, to be honest, and media in general, because everything is changing so much, you know. So yeah.
Cool. So guys, we're going to have to wrap this up shortly, but I want to leave you guys with this. Hopefully this will be useful to those at home. What is the integral pieces of advice that you can give, you know, artists of all levels? You know, what is the one or two things that you'd say to them when you know, going into press?
So for me, I think do as much as you can yourself. You know, unless you've got a huge budget to work with and loads of support from different people, there's so much stuff you can do yourself. You know, there's a lot of kind of free advice out there online. There's loads of people who are willing to help. You know, there's lots of great free panels like this one, or, you know, various other things. Loads of research on the internet about PR, what it is, how to do it, the basics of it. You know, you can find out how to write a press release, what's important to put in there. If you have all those skills, or you have a friend who's good at it, who's willing to help you, I would really recommend doing as much as you can yourself for as long as you can, until, as we said at the start of the call, you feel like you're ready. when you are ready to actually like pay for some PR, or you think you're ready, again, you know, just do as much research as you can. You know, don't kind of like blanket approach loads of companies. You know, look at either artists that you admire, or like people whose careers you've kind of looked at and gone like, wow, I wonder how they did that. Or, you know, genre specific companies. You know, just find the right fit and send them a polite professional email with all of the things that they will need in it. You know, I get emails from people like, yo, new album, want to work on it? Link, you know, and I'm just like, and I normally, I don't know why, I normally listen to it anyway, but you know, like most people won't do that. They will just go delete, you know, like, so send an email with a proper professional email that shows that you understand who the company are, what they do, that you want to work with them specifically for a reason, and give them, you know, a link to your music, some links to your socials, a very small bio about who you are and what you do. If they are interested, they will get back to you. You know, it's fine to chase them, but I wouldn't like harass people. Obviously, you know, if you don't hear back after a couple of emails, I would leave it. I think when you're going into working with someone, I would try and be as upfront about like the amount of money you have to work with as possible, and what your budget is, because if it's the right fit for you as an artist, they will be flexible and understanding to what you have to work with. You know, I mean, sometimes people will come to us and they'll have a very limited budget, you know, and they'll want a full PR campaign, and it might also be like a little bit too early. And we tend to go back to people and say, look, you know, we really like your music and we want to help you, but like honestly, we can't really do a good job on it for you know, the budget you have, or you know, it's not going to be the right sort of approach for you. And in those cases, we do actually tend to kind of shift the focus onto digital marketing support if they want to work with us anyway. You know, we try and come up with a way where the returns are going to be much more immediate on their investment, and they're going to be able to actually like see that money working for them in real time, rather than, you know, what can be quite like an ephemeral sort of effect of a PR campaign. So yeah, so I would say do your research, you know, be upfront about the budget, pick the right people to work with. To be honest, my biggest piece of advice for artists is like, just really concentrate on like your music. Like, you know, like it's such a cliche, but like it's true. Like it always comes down to like, is the song good? You know, like if you have great music and you have a good attitude and you're polite to people and you are earnest and you work hard, people will gravitate towards you because they will want to support you. You know, like they will see what you're doing and think, this is amazing music or art or whatever. And you're if you're pleasant to work with, there's no barriers to kind of fully, you know, as a PR person, I fully invest in someone else. You know, my job is to promote whatever someone else is doing, and I have to like love and believe in what they're doing to do that effectively. And you know, that establishing that kind of like good working relationship with people is very important, I think. So yeah, that would probably be my advice. Chris, I don't know, you think about the digital side of things?
Yeah, I'd say like just try and be a student of you know, your craft. Like think about you know, how you can be creative with your vision. Like have a vision first, you know, be ambitious with it, and then you know, be consistent in what you do, whether that's planning out how your social media is going to look for around a release, you know, creating a content calendar of what you might post on certain days, you know, learning to use Photoshop and things like that so that you can actually create cool artwork for your socials, like update your social covers and profile pictures and all things like that. But yeah, just try and be consistent, and don't be afraid of sticking to what works for you, because often, you know, you see a lot of artists that will try and cover all the bases and, you know, like try and you know, have a presence on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and, you know, whatever else. Like if you find something that works for you and that you think, you know, you naturally gravitate towards as an artist and just as a person, something that you understand, stick with that and try and build your fan base there. And there are lots of ways that you can reach out and build new audiences through digital marketing, but also think about the fans that you already have, and how you can make them more engaged, because a lot of people do think too much, about the people that their music isn't reaching, but often the best way to grow is to actually, double down on the people that do care and are interested already, and find ways that you can get them to spread your message and spread your music.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you guys both so much. That was really good. Like I said, we could talk all day about it. And I think everyone watching would have definitely got something from that. This is, of course, Chris and Jamie from Wall of Sound. I'm sure these guys will be more than happy, for you guys to hit them up if you have any more questions. Obviously, if you do that, give them a polite email. No, yo, dudes, here's the record. Thank you for watching. That was How Important is PR with Chris and Jamie from Wall of Sound. This is Soundcheck. Soundcheck is being hosted by Brave Island, which is a new platform for young creative people on the Isle of Wight. It's going to provide opportunities across the whole spectrum of the creative industries. All you need to do to get involved is to sign up at braveisland.uk. It's all free, and some of it's even paid, and it's well worth checking out if you are looking to get into the creative world.